What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, putting America first, second, and third. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And welcome to our show today. It is Monday, May 31st, 2021. It is Memorial Day. It's the last day of the month. We're definitely getting into summer here, and we have a lot to talk about today. And as usual, we're going to do news until I run out of news. Then we're going to open up the phones for your comments, questions, observations, and opinions. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble. So let's get right on into it. For most of the country, Memorial Day has been wonderful weather. People are out there doing, vacation kind of things. Saturday, Claire and I drove up to Amish country. It's the first time we're starting to get out now that the COVID pandemic is winding down. Yesterday, we went out on Christmas Lake on a friend's boat. And so we've had a little bit of a vacation, and we're enjoying our last day off, although obviously I'm here doing the radio show. In Colorado and Texas, not quite so good. They had major thunderstorms and tornadoes, and so it was a little rough there, and they're expecting that storm to hit here in Indiana in the next couple of days. Okay, now, it is Memorial Day, and a lot of people have different opinions about it. Of course, Kamala Harris has drawn a bit of a backlash for just saying, enjoy the 3-day weekend and ignoring what Memorial Day is all about, where we lionize our war dead who have died in wars for the United States, but not everybody sees them as heroes. Over at henrymacco.com, there's an article reminding us that the people killed in U.S. wars are not necessarily heroes. For the most part, they are victims along with the people on the other side who are killed. And Memorial Day is out there trying to normalize war, to glorify war, to sell it as something desirable for the next generation. And we do need to work at maybe negating that and just saying that the war dead, they are dead, and that is just something that we need to remember that war does. It's a reality, and young people considering a career in the military need to consider that, especially with the United States so sincere about starting more wars around the world, especially with Russia and China. Now, again, with the COVID pandemic lifting, people are out there traveling, and nearly 2 million people were screened by TSA at the airports. This is one of the busiest days since the COVID pandemic began, and they're saying 40 million people took to the roads for Memorial Day weekend, despite the highest gas prices in 7 years. So people were definitely getting out there, and they're seeing friends and family, which is a really, really good thing. Getting into the political news, story coming on out of Investment Watch blog, and it turns out that President Biden and his cohorts may have accepted a cash bribe from a top Russian lobbyist in 2020, just before the Biden administration scrapped the sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And so, again, pay for play. And a lot of people were wondering why Biden was allowing the Nord Stream 2 pipeline to proceed, even as he shut down the Keystone XL pipeline. Down in Texas, they had a big debate about their new voting bill. And after the course of several hours of debate Saturday and early Sunday, the Texas Senate approved the voting bill. And basically, the bill is intended to require voter ID, to impose limits on absentee and mail-in ballots, and various other means to secure honest elections. Of course, the Democrats, including Joe Biden himself, are screaming voter suppression oppression, threat to democracy. And the Democrats are so desperate to stop this that when the Texas House went to vote on the bill, the Democrats all walked out of the House floor in order to prevent there being a quorum for the vote ahead of the midnight deadline for the bill. Greg Abbott is now considering calling a special session of the House in order to get the bill passed. So we'll see what happens there. Up in Windham, New Hampshire, the audit there is getting curiouser and curiouser. It turns out that the auditors, remember the auditors were chosen over the objection of the citizens of Windham itself, and apparently these auditors actually invited the president of the Dominion Voting Machine Company to sit in on the audit, and you have to wonder why. And one of the things that came on out of that is that Dominion knew that folding the ballots would cause problems months before the election occurred and did nothing about it. Article out of Investment Watch blog is reporting on how something earth-shattering was caught in the Windham audit. And there was this live video with Nick Mosutter, Cam Con, Susan D. Sattambrino, and Professor David Clements. And YouTube has already yanked the video to keep us from seeing whatever went off there, but it's being called the smoking gun of proof of election fraud. Also, where the ballots were being kept, it turns out the building was wide open and a security alarm was tripped, meaning somebody went into the building to tamper with the ballots. Down in Arizona, they have announced that they have counted 1 million ballots by hand and analyzed them. And so that is moving ahead as well. Over at Citi Field during Saturday night's Mets game, somebody flew a Trump won banner over the field towed by an airplane. And so even New York is waking up to the election fraud and the fact that Trump actually won last November. Now, Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, is traveling the country right now, and he is set to return to Iowa in July, fueling speculation that he may try and throw his hat in the ring for the 2024 presidential election. Oh, please, no, we don't need another one of that sort running for office. Getting into COVID-19, there's a lot going on there. Story coming on out of the Daily Mail. There is a new study that says COVID-19 has no credible natural ancestor and therefore had to be created in a laboratory somewhere. Now, we're already seeing a huge propaganda campaign being mounted to reassure us COVID-19 came from bats or it came from the fish market, and that claims that it came out of a laboratory is just a tinfoil hat wacko conspiracy theory that we should not be paying attention to. And so the propaganda war is out there. Story from Global Research, mass vaccination is triggering a spike in cases and deaths. And they're basically saying that COVID cases are rising sharply in nearly every country that has launched a mass vaccination campaign. And they're holding up as an example Cambodia, which began their vaccination campaign in February. Before that, they had 0 fatalities, and now after the vaccination program, the deaths are starting to pile up. And they're wondering, is there something in the vaccine that is killing people? Yeah, I'd say that's entirely possible. Or at the very least, the vaccine that is supposed to protect us from COVID is in fact causing more cases. Okay, story out of Crack News. COVID vaccine injury reports among 12 to 17-year-olds have more than tripled in the last week. And this is from the Vaccine Injury Reporting System. Meanwhile, over at the Children's Health Defense Fund, they have mounted a petition to revoke all COVID-19 vaccines. And they're backing it up with all of these details showing massive malfeasance by the CDC and the FDA that cost lives, prolonged the pandemic, and protected the continued use of these dangerous, unproven vaccines, all for the money. Story coming on out of Global Research again, talking about if the spike protein in the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines is causing blood clots, brain inflammation, and heart attacks. And we have seen other reports from mostly European doctors saying, yes, the spike protein is causing a huge problem. It can lead to serious long-term neurological problems. We're hearing all these stories of blood clots that are forming and killing people. Heart attacks, and there does seem to be a problem there. And people who've been vaccinated with the mRNA vaccines are shedding those spike proteins onto people who have not been vaccinated. Another story, this one coming out of the Truth Seeker, talking about a chemical that is included in the Moderna vaccine. Now, this is actually listed in the chart of the ingredients included in mRNA COVID vaccines, and they list this SM-102 heptadecan 9-il 8-2-hydroxyethyl 6-oxo-6 undecloxyhexylaminooctanoate. There's a mouthful for you there. But when you go to documents about this SM-102 chemical, such as the Cayman Chemical Company of Ann Arbor, Michigan, it lists SM-102 as being purely for research use only and is not for use on human or veterinary use. So why is this chemical included in these vaccines when it is clearly warned against human use? Kind of makes you think what's going on out there. Here is a good study for those of you living in states that legalize recreational marijuana. There is a study. It's in preprint right now. It's over on the preprint server BioRxiv, basically suggesting that cannabis inhibits the SARS-CoV-2 replication in human lungs. In other words, if you are smoking pot, it will limit the ability of COVID-19 to reproduce in your lungs. So light up, people. There is a good alternative to the orthodox medical program of constant vaccinations. Over in France, they're locking their borders and saying that British travelers have to show a compelling reason to enter France, because Macron is trying to keep the Indian variant of COVID-19 out of his country. So travel from the UK will only be permitted for EU nationals, French residents, or those traveling for essential reasons such as bereavement or childcare. So we're not out of the woods there. Over at Rutgers University, students are protesting the mandatory vaccination rule that's being imposed for returning students. Meanwhile, over in Great Britain, there have been huge protests in London against the lockdown, against the face masks, and BBC and Sky News are absolutely, totally ignoring this. We're talking 1 million people in the streets of London, and it wasn't really considered newsworthy because it's a threat to Big Pharma and their endless profits here. Getting on to something we've talked about before, and this is from Global Research. Getting on back to Merck's Gardasil HPV vaccine, there are injuries being caused from that, and there is a new study out showing that these injuries are being significantly underreported. Now, we were getting reports from European journals of all kinds of problems from Gardasil, including narcolepsy, just absolutely wrecking people's lives. And now, of course, they're pushing it for boys, which is kind of funny because boys don't have a cervix and therefore cannot get cervical cancer. But pushing it for boys doubles the available market for the vaccine and therefore doubles the profits. In other areas where you should be taking a close look at product ingredients, Amazon, eBay, and other online stores are selling these teeth whitener products that have toxic levels of hydrogen peroxide in them. And so you need to be careful about that. It's almost like, the quest for the almighty dollar has become so powerful that health and safety of the customers just really isn't a factor any longer. So let the buyer beware, and you need to really pay attention to those the ingredients list. Okay, turning to the international news, and again with a reminder that this is Memorial Day, we are now seeing from the Department of Veterans Affairs that 73,846 U.S. soldiers died from both Gulf Wars, and that number was being withheld from the American people. We went through this back in Vietnam, where the accurate, true number of Americans killed in that war was not made public until long after that war was actually over. Okay, story coming on out of Sputnik News. The NATO basically broke their non-enlargement pledge to Russia. And a lot of people have forgotten about this, but it is the fact that NATO broke their non-enlargement pledge that undermines the West propaganda to depict Russia as the aggressor in that part of the world. And it really does go back to another broken promise by the West to not expand NATO toward Russia. Following the reunification of Germany, and NATO has not kept that promise. They keep moving closer and closer to the border with Russia, and Russia is understandably concerned about that. Another article along the same line, this from strategicculture.org, talking about the United States is a serial nuclear aggressor whose veneer of supposed virtue is thin and increasingly transparent. And it's certainly true, because with all this talk about Saddam's nuclear weapons and Iran's nuclear weapons and Syria's maybe nuclear weapons and North Korea's nuclear weapons, there's one and only one nation that has ever actually used a nuclear weapon of mass destruction on the civilians of another country, and that nation is the United States of America. Okay. Another story, this one coming out of Sputnik News again. Earlier this month, the European Union issued a draft report on the direction of the bloc's political relations with Russia, calling for regime change. And it's being described as a last-ditch effort to save the European Union bloc's relevance because they become rather impotent with all their infighting and corruption and certainly all the confusion caused by the runaway immigration. And they are not the world power they imagined they were going to be. Over in North Korea, they are slamming the U.S. ending guidelines limiting South Korean missile ranges. They're accusing the United States of hostility and shameful double dealing. Well, nothing new in that, I would say, at this point. U.S. President Joe Biden's nominee to oversee these special forces, Christopher Mayer, said that officials should strongly consider deploying American commandos to Taiwan, where they would school the local troops on how to deter a potential Chinese invasion. So there we are again, trying to stir up trouble in that part of the world. Now, earlier in the week, or actually last week, we reported on how Syria's Bashar al-Assad won a new term as president with an overwhelming landslide. And Iran's top military commander has sent a message to Iran that Iran is ready to boost Syria's defense capabilities. And Tehran congratulated Assad on his election victory. And we're going to have to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. And again, a quick reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network needs your continuing support so that we can continue to do what we do. And once again, the postal address to send a check, money order, or if you prefer, anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. Now, if you send in a donation of $100, you will get your choice of an RBN coffee mug or an RBN t-shirt like this one I'm wearing right here. And so include your t-shirt size and a return address. If you send in a donation of $115, that's 115, you will get both items. And don't forget the Frontside Firearms deal. That is a real sweetheart deal for supporters of the Second Amendment. Getting on back to the international news, over in Yemen, Houthi rebels made a video showing how a U.S. supplied Saudi Arabia-operated M1 Abrams tank was destroyed with a basic rudimentary anti-tank guided missile. It's a huge embarrassment. The video is very graphic, and too bad you can't see it because YouTube has already pulled it off of their servers. Don't want you realizing that these M1 tanks you all paid for really aren't doing the job out there. Over in Europe, NATO has this ongoing drill, and they've had a bunch of accidents. The most recent is an armored carrier ran off the road in Estonia, injuring 2 people. And this is the 3rd incident in just a week. Is this any way to run a war? And over in Bulgaria, these stray U.S. soldiers who got lost despite all the modern technology and GPS and everything, they raided a Bulgarian plant making biofuel equipment in what is basically being referred to as a huge bungled navigation error. And the owner of the factory has gone public. And basically the U.S. soldiers armed with assault rifles and moving fire teams secured the facility with no resistance from the workers. Why would they resist? They had no idea what was going on, but they had the wrong target. News story coming on out. The U.S. National Intelligence Agency received support from Denmark to spy on European politicians, and Edward Snowden is saying that the Biden administration was deeply involved. Now, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and President Frank-Walter Steinmeier were among those being spied on by the NSA with the help of the Danish Defense Intelligence Service. So the U.S. is spying not only on its own citizens, but leaders in foreign countries. This has been going on for a long time, since 2013. And mind you, these are countries that are supposedly our friends. Okay. Little bit of good news coming on out of Israel. It may be that Benjamin Netanyahu is finally going to be brought down. The rivals of Netanyahu have agreed to form a coalition government, and it's a bit of a surprise because these are 2 factions that have widely differing opinions on things like gay rights, but they have decided to basically put those differences aside in their goal of forming a new coalition government that would see Benjamin Netanyahu removed from power and open to his corruption trial over those German submarines. Now, Netanyahu is out there screaming, this is the fraud of the century, and I don't know what he's going to do to try and stay in power. He may kick off war with Iran. I mean, he's absolutely, absolutely desperate right now. Over in Palestine, patients in Jerusalem are facing the loss of their Gaza homes from the hospital. And they're talking about patients at the Augusta Victoria Hospital in Jerusalem. And because of the Israeli bombing and blockades and roadblocks, they're not able to get there anymore. Caitlin Johnstone is out there in an article reported by Russia Today saying that Israel's narrative management is getting incredibly desperate and brazen. And one of the things we're definitely seeing is all this corporate media screaming about anti-Semitic attacks here and anti-Semitic attacks there, and feel sorry for the Jewish people no matter what they're doing to Palestine, because the Jews are always the victim, and we, the corporate media, will always remind you of that. Now, last week we were talking about how the leadership of the Mossad is changing, and the incoming head of the Mossad is saying there will be fewer assassinations and a much lower profile. He's probably responding to all the Mossad scandals that have made it into the media. But the outgoing head of the Mossad is calling for a ratcheting up of activities against Iran. Okay, we got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to our show here. Let's talk about the economy for a little bit. Joe Biden has come out with his new budget plan. It's $6 trillion. Most of which is going to be borrowed from the Federal Reserve, deepening our enslavement to those private bankers. And he claims he's going to offset it eventually with tax increases in the long term. And the budget is going to reduce inequality, combat climate change, there's too many wasters right there, rebuild the U.S. infrastructure, yeah, that's needed and overdue, and invest in new technologies, probably most of which are related to bombing other people and getting them to do what they want the United States to do. Now, a lot of Republicans are opposed to this, just out of a sense of fiscal responsibility, that the government at some point has to learn to live within its own income. And obviously, they would save a huge amount of money cutting back on the defense budget, cutting back on all this money they send to places like Israel, and really focus on taking the Americans' tax money and using it for the benefit of the American taxpayer. And stop spending all this money on illegal immigrants and, drag queen story hour and all this other liberal stuff here. So the Republicans are getting ready to fight this huge $8 trillion budget proposal, which has already in it a $1.8 trillion deficit, even with the tax increases counted into it. And the GOP is accurately saying that Trump's budget is going to harm the country with higher taxes, which we can't afford anyway, more debt, which we can't afford, and increased inflation, which we're already having to deal with, and that this budget is not going to build back better, which is Biden's pet phrase when talking about spending lots and lots of money that neither he nor the American people actually have. The White House has responded by saying that the GOP has 1 week to reach a deal with the Democrats on the infrastructure bill, or Biden will simply go it alone with an executive order, which I'm not sure he can actually do under the letter of the Constitution. Okay, up in Toronto, they had this unexpected snowfall. The temperature dropped over 20 degrees in just 3 days. Gosh darn that human-caused global warming. Also, speaking of Canada, Justin Trudeau has ordered flags flown at half-staff across Canada following the discovery of 215 children's bodies at a Catholic-run Indian residential school. And the residential school scandal article is one that has been going on for years, and they found another example of it, and it really is one of the darker chapters in religiously run school history, as far as I'm concerned. Gold has moved above $1,900, and experts are saying that gold may be entering a new bullish price phase. So maybe a good time to buy on in. Buy low, sell high. Always good advice there. Getting on to the immigration news, our border czar, Kamala Harris, is now encouraging U.S. businesses to outsource their investment from U.S. companies to companies in Central America. Now, how does this make sense in terms of the struggling U.S. economy, U.S. joblessness, and, dealing with the illegal immigrants? And I'm sure Harris is thinking that if we send a bunch of money down to Central America, they'll have good-paying jobs down there, and they'll stay where they are. But you know something? That is the problem for those Central American companies to solve, not us. What we need to do is what Trump was trying to do, lock down that border. And it can be done. Eisenhower did it. So we know it can be done. But as long as the Democrats are handing out, free food and free medical care and free housing and free everything to illegal immigrants, we're going to have more illegal immigrants, and that is just the way it is. Donald Trump is ripping into Biden's border policies. He was interviewed on Newsmax and said that, Biden's immigration policy is destroying our country. He's absolutely correct on that. Okay, over the last couple of weeks, I've been commenting on the sudden flood of stories in the corporate media about UFOs and flying saucers and what's going on. And I pointed out that in history, this media attention, TV shows, movies about flying saucers and alien spacecraft usually line up with the testing of black project aircraft, so that when taxpayers see several $1 billion of their tax money flash overhead at high speed, they'll run into town and say, I just saw an alien spaceship, and everybody will ignore them and not pay attention to what's going on. So maybe that's what's happening again. But we had yesterday, 60 Minutes aired this report about UFOs. We've had that video that the Pentagon put on out claiming to show UFOs, comments from Obama and everything. But this article that is coming on out of UNS.com saying the Pentagon is behind this current UFO fraud. And it makes perfect sense here. And I get a lot of emails from people saying, how do you know there aren't intelligent civilizations out there? Well, let me clarify that. I am sure there are intelligent civilizations out there. I just can't think of a reason why they would bother with us. Our main occupation continues to be tribal warfare and killing each other off. Contrary to agendas in movies, they don't need to steal our water. There's plenty of water out there, whole mountains of it out there in the Oort cloud that are going to be easier to harvest than sucking it up from the bottom of our gravity well here. The same thing with gold. If you look at that movie Cowboys and Aliens, which had a huge cast and a terrible script, there's plenty of gold out there as well. There really isn't much of anything on this planet that would be of interest of an alien civilization. And no doubt they would not find our planet any more comfortable than we would landing on Mars and walking around without a spacesuit. We are very comfortable here on planet Earth because we evolved here, and aliens from another world would be comfortable on their planet because that is where they evolved, and it doesn't mean they can land in a spaceship and walk around naked on Earth like we saw in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It is, after all, a science fiction movie. And again, while we like to talk about warp drive and hyperspace in science fiction movies, there is still no credible theory for being able to take any kind of a spaceship past the light barrier with enough significant speed. And there's also the time dilation problem. It's going to be a one-way trip. Even if you had a faster-than-light spaceship and you went off to Proxima Centauri and you came back after a week, Earth would have aged 8 years while you were gone. And if you went to a far more distant place, like, for example, the Andromeda Galaxy, Earth would not be recognizable when you got back if, in fact, it was actually still here. So I'm sure there are plenty of intelligent civilizations out there, and certainly there are ways to try and detect them. There are expectations that the Keck telescope will be able to detect artificial lighting on some of the exoplanets near our solar system. Certainly listening for radio waves is another way. I would suggest listening for the AC hum from their power distribution systems, because we're talking terawatts of power coursing through those wires. Now, of course, radiative power is directly proportional to frequency, and since we're talking about frequencies between, example, 50 and 400 hertz, it would take a very sensitive receiver to pick it up, but that would certainly be another way of saying, yes, there has to be an intelligent civilization on that planet because they're using AC power. Okay, getting into other news. This one is from Investment Watch blog. There have been more than 1,000 earthquakes in California in the past week. Now, they're all small ones, but it is again raising concern that there may be a big one coming up. And California has been expecting the big one for a long time. Now, Claire and I, when we were living in North Hollywood, we were there for the Northridge earthquake, and we got shaken so badly we thought that was the big one. And we did lose a lot and suffered a lot of damage. But there's no question that that whole fault system running up the western side of the United States is definitely geared for a big one. You've got the Cascadia fault, that looks like it's going to let go at some point. So it's only a matter of time. It's not if, it's when. Getting on to Mars here. Ingenuity, we mentioned this last week, had its first, shall we say, whoopsie on Mars. Ingenuity climbed to an altitude of 33 feet. It flew horizontally for 492 feet at 9 miles an hour, but somewhere along the way, it started wobbling. And it looks like it may have been a software error where one of the cameras that looks down that gives Ingenuity its orientation stopped sending images, and the software that was trying to resolve those images to get Ingenuity's attitude started producing bad data. But it did land safely, and they're figuring out what happened. And they will get that back in the air, and good for them. Now, speaking of exoplanets, I'll tell you what, we're going to go ahead and open the phone lines early because I'm starting to run out of news here. It was a slow news day. Area code 512-248-8252. Story coming on out of Universe Today. As they discover more and more exoplanets, and they're starting to actually survey those alien solar systems, they're starting to come to the conclusion that our own solar system is rather boringly normal. In other words, there's nothing really spectacularly different between our solar system and what they're finding out there on the neighboring stars. Meaning these stars all have planets, they have gas giants, they have small rocky planets, and at this point I think an apology is owed to Giordano Bruno, who among other things was burned to death for suggesting that the stars were just like the sun, only further away, and that they probably had their own planets as well. All right, we have been talking about deep fakes. And We're talking about deep fake images of people, deep fake animations that can make it look like people are saying things they didn't really say. There was a convincing animation video, rather, of Robert De Niro delivering some lines in German, which is not a language he speaks. And now there's an article that is coming on out of Ars Technica saying that we now need to be careful of deep fake satellite images and deep fake maps that can be used to propagandize us. And they're holding up as examples satellite images showing the expansion of the detention camps in Xinjiang, China, and other aerial images, and they're saying they can all be manipulated to a degree where it's almost impossible to tell that that's what's happening. And so you can no longer trust what you're seeing in the corporate media or on TV. Not that you ever really could anyway, but it's getting much more sophisticated and difficult to tell. Over in Russia, there's a court case going on. Facebook is being ordered by prosecutors to block the page of the Russian LGBT network, saying that the page has a negative impact on children. I would agree with that. The initial complaint was filed by the member of the parliament, Igor Sapko, the former mayor of Perm, and a representative of the ruling United Russia Party, who said that propaganda of non-traditional sexual relationships is becoming mainstream on many internet platforms. He is certainly correct about that. All right, we got callers already on the line. Let's go to Kelly in Austin. Hello, Kelly. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Kelly, you there?
Hi.
Hi, you're on the air.
Kelly, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, you're on the air.
So you were Northridge for that quake, were you?
Yeah, well, actually, we were living in North Hollywood, but we were close enough where, we lost a lot of computers and a lot of furniture.
Yeah, that was, what, 92, 91?
Yeah.
About that time?
Yep.
Yeah, I was, in subsequent years, I was teaching courses in physical geology as an adjunct, and I had a couple students who were in that earthquake. They said it was, it scared the hell out of them.
Yeah, it was very scary. We had a building, a brick building just 2 doors down from us collapse completely. And we had cracks in our walls so wide we could see outside through them.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of the buildings that just collapsed like pancakes. What happened was on the lower ledge of those buildings, there was insufficient piling support, and they just pancaked right down.
Yeah.
And that happened in a lot of parking lots around there as well. Now that's a bad earthquake, but I'm going to tell you that the worst earthquakes, the biggest earthquakes, are typically always along subduction zones.
Yes.
If you look at what happens in Chile, where you have the Pacific plate being subducted enough the South American plate, and Chile has had some 8-point-plus earthquakes there in recent years.
Well, don't forget the one they had in Japan that knocked out Fukushima. That was an 8+.
Well, I was getting around to that one too. Plus, the earthquakes up along the Aleutian Trench are always very big earthquakes.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you, I'm predicting at some point in time up in the Pacific Northwest, there's going to be a massive earthquake up there when the North American plate and the Juan de Fuca plate really have another collision there.
Yes.
That's going to be very bad. Now, typically, if you look at where the biggest quakes are, they're really always where you have collision boundaries, like, let's say, subduction zones, where you have one plate colliding directly into another, as with, say, the Himalayan mountains.
Well, we've got that fault structure here, the New Madrid fault system, which was actually the location of the largest quake in U.S. history. Fortunately, when it happened, there was hardly anybody living in the area. Here in Indiana, very little seismic activity. I think they've had 2 quakes in the last 3 years that you could actually feel. So we're not too worried. We're not as worried as when we live in Southern California, or for that matter, Hawaii. We were there for that big one on the Big Island, knocked out all the electricity.
Well, I envy you for having been through the Northridge earthquake.
Okay, well, Kelly, stay on the line. Kelly, stay on the line. I got to put you on hold. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. The phone lines are open, 512-248-8252, and we're talking with Kelly in Austin. We're talking about various earthquakes around the world. We started with the Northridge quake that Claire and I survived. And what was really interesting is a film crew from Swiss Public Television came through almost immediately after, and they contacted me about being a location producer for a documentary that they were shooting about the Northridge. And because of that, I got to tour the remains of the Northridge Meadows apartment complex, which had just absolutely collapsed during the quake. And even though the quake was in January, a lot of people still had their Christmas decorations up, and it was kind of almost surreal to see this ruined building and all these Christmas ornaments all over the ground and everything.
Yeah, I saw a lot of the photos of the damage following the Northridge earthquake, and it was pretty extensive. I wouldn't want to have been anywhere near there. About the New Madrid system, the New Madrid quake, that occurs up along the Mississippi River Valley, which is really a northern extension of what was called a triple rift junction, or an lockage, a failed arm of a triple rift junction when North America was separated from South America was. Up in that area, you've got very competent rock at relatively shallow depths and deep depths, and those solid rocks are going to transmit a lot of energy a very long way.
Yes.
Unlike some of the less consolidated rocks as you go further south into the Gulf Coastal Plain. So when that thing goes again, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near Memphis or St. Louis or anywhere in southern Illinois, because I suspect there could be a great deal of damage up there. Those cities are not engineered to withstand earthquakes.
No, they don't have the kind of seismic code that we had in Southern California.
Or in Japan. I've seen videos of high-rise buildings in Japan, in Tokyo, while bouncing up and down and waffling back and forth, because they're built on a series of rollers and springs to mitigate that energy, to absorb that energy as it rolls through. But you get up there in St. Louis, and those things are right on solid rock. And what's going to happen is that if you get a nice surface wave rolling through there after the P wave and the S wave, a lot of those buildings could just be ripped apart. And you might find,
well, with the solid rock, the seismic waves are going to come through more as high-frequency rattles, as opposed to going through alluvial fill, where it's sort of more of a long-period sway.
That's true, but it's going to be devastating. And because they're planted on solid rock up there, it's the building that absorbs the energy.
Yes.
Whereas in Japan and in Southern California, where you have very good earthquake engineering, those high-rise buildings are built on rollers and springs, and those rollers and springs absorb the shock or the energy rather than allowing it to be transmitted up to the superstructure of the building itself. Anywho, I kind of envy you for being through that. I've always said that all geologists need to see things like a volcanic eruption or an earthquake. In my 40-plus years, I haven't been lucky.
Well, as somebody who's been through that, you're probably better off not experiencing it.
I probably am. It's something I'd like to see or experience once in my life. Thanks for taking the call, Mike.
All right, you've got it. We've got other callers waiting on the line, 512-248-8252. We got to take a break for station identification, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Daniel in British Columbia. Hello, Daniel. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I called you last week, and the topic that you were covering was transgenderism, especially in younger prepubescent. And I thought I'd just elaborate on that. And so I did a little bit of background research. It's kind of my hobby, I suppose, false flags and so forth. But I just did see a pattern. I think your listeners might be interested. So I had mentioned last week there was a 4,000% rise in children identifying as transgender. Now, whether that's forced on them or whether that's some of these pharmaceutical companies pushing that kind of agenda, it's hard to say. But I know there's a few of these advocacy groups that are that have been around for a while. They're really going into full, like they're really propagandizing.
Yes, they are.
America's youth. And anyways, the first
Daniel, are you there? Sounded like he cut out. Daniel, are you still there?
I think we lost his
I think we
audio.
lost
that
him.
was,
All right. Well,
There he is.
hopefully he'll
He's
call back.
back.
Meanwhile, we're
He's
going to
back.
go to Joe in Nome.
No,
Hello,
he's here.
Joe. Welcome
He's
to the
here.
show. What's on your mind?
Daniel's back.
Oh, Daniel's back. All right, Daniel. We got cut off there, and you were talking about these advocacy groups propagandizing or proselytizing young people and basically selling transgenderism as a new fashion trend.
He got confused because you didn't hear him. Let's go to Joe.
All right, Joe and Nome, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, yeah, 6.1 earthquake in 30 miles east of Talkeetna, Alaska.
Yeah.
Depth 27 miles. You kind of poo-pooed that, what I told you about the 5.5 earthquake underneath Anchorage, but it was... I misspoke. It was a 5.8.
Okay.
Then, but it was a 5.5 north of Anchorage that tore the crap out of the Parks Highway a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I haven't had a chance to check up on the news and the damage locally. It was my sister that told me. I went and looked on. She lives in Talkeetna. I went and looked at the AEIC, Alaska Earthquake Information Center.
Yes.
To get the particulars on this 6.1. I'm guessing it did do some damage to the highways, but it's probably far enough away from Anchorage to do it. And we also have pretty stringent earthquake codes up here. But I don't know, did Kelly mention anything about the correspondence with the lunar eclipse? It seems to me, and there's a YouTube channel out there called Dutch Sense.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with him?
No, I'm not, but I am familiar with the theory that when the moon gets closer to the Earth, the tidal stress on the crust can increase and trigger quakes. I don't know that it's that well documented. The fact of the eclipse doesn't have that much to do with it as much as the supermoon itself.
Well, be that as it may, Dutch put up a video. He'd been on a hiatus for quite a while, but he found it important to update the latest. And by the way, we've got another solar eclipse coming up next month.
Yes, we do.
Excuse me, this month, end
Yes.
of this month, yeah. And I'd be looking out then, too. By the way, you can thank me for driving off those flat earthers with my revelation about their president. And this is just an example of CIA PSYOP, this flat earth business. And you can congratulate yourself for making the CIA nervous and having them call in with their flat earth crap.
Yeah, I sort of take it as a badge of honor when they're trying to put that kookification to work.
Okay. And as far as kookification goes, you know I'm not trying to do that to you, but being that you're a uniformitarianist and I'm a catastrophist, I do have to kind of consider you a gatekeeper after all. Now, anyway, regarding your flight simulator business, I got hours logged in my flight log on a FAA flight simulator.
Yes.
And my flight instructor, I wasn't her favorite student.
Yeah.
And she didn't have much of a ground school either. She was just more interested in getting me up there and giving me some experience flying a plane.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've done my 50 hours. I've soloed, and I was the last person that she would let use her brand new flight simulator.
Mm-hmm.
This is funny. When I landed the flight simulator back in Needles, that was I did touch and goes at Kingman, Havasu, Blythe, and then brought it back on the simulator and landed at Needles. And she turned to me and she said, "Okay, we're done." And she said to me, "You're the first person in my class that managed to land the flight simulator." And check this out. This will blow your mind. Before she said, "Okay, now go back and land it at Needles." I said, "Well, hang on a second. Can I try a maneuver? I want to try a spin stall on your simulator." Now, I'd already done a spin stall with my alternate flight instructor because he had a plane that was rated for that sort of thing. And my flight instructor, she didn't have, she had a 172, which was souped up to about a 180. But anyway, I gained a little altitude. I slowed it down to a stall and dropped my wing, went into a spin, and then pulled out successfully, and I didn't set off any alarms. And furthermore, she signed off everything ready for my check ride, right?
Okay.
And I went and did a 97 on my FAA written.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, I turned out I was her her number one student after all.
Okay.
In spite of my studded punk rock vest, and but no. Hey, at 66, I'm a little old to be risking my life up there, and I can't afford it anyway.
That was the big one for me. When I had my flight training, I just couldn't keep it up financially.
Yeah. Besides which, it's obvious to me that a majority of the bush pilots in Alaska are freaking crazy out of their damn mind.
But they're very, very good.
No. There are some that are good. As a matter of fact, when my dad flew to the North Pole, he wanted to take Lou Earhart. You heard of him?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, General Olds, when he gave him that C-47, oh, man, that interference is bad.
Yeah, we're hearing it at this end as well.
There was this World War II ace that got in some trouble out here, named Bill Benedict.
Yeah.
Got in trouble in Nome, and General Olds wanted to get him out of town, so to speak, and cover for him. And so he was the one that actually landed that C-47 at the North Pole, not my father. My father was standing at the back door trying to get a good look at the frozen lead that he wanted to land on with the airplane that General Olds had given him. And Bill Benedict came around and landed it on on the pack ice instead of on the lead. And they were ribbing my dad about falling out of the door. And that's how my dad supposedly was the first man to set foot at the North Pole. But the Russians did it in 1937 and 1938. So that was a bullshit story, too, which is about...
Okay, got to watch your language on this radio here. Anyway, Joe, thank you very much for the phone call and the history lesson. And, keep the blue part up and the brown part down. And it looks like Daniel is back now. So, Daniel, welcome back to the show. And we were talking about how transgender advocacy groups are proselytizing young people into thinking that transgenderism is cool, it's hip, it's the latest fashion statement. And they're aiming at kids who are really too young to understand what gender really is.
Yeah, that's it, exactly where we're headed right now. So I did find out some of the leading groups right now. There's the National Center for Transgender Equality, Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, and the Trans Student Educational Resource Fund. And surprisingly or unsurprisingly to a lot of your listeners, a lot of the founders of these happen to have these Ashkenazi surnames.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if that's if there's a reason behind that or just a coincidence.
Well, they may be the sources of the funding, because I can imagine a lot of charitable institutions would be rather hesitant to get their names tangled up with something that is so politically controversial.
Yeah, maybe true. Also, we've heard a lot about the Drag Queen Story Hour.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of digging on that one, and that one started with something called Radar Productions. And Radar Productions got into the American Library Association, their socially responsible roundtable, and they were also pushing books about two parents having the same sex years ago. So they were actually at the forefront of the Drag Queen Story Hours. And the biggest funder of that was Zellerbach Pulp and Paper Company.
Okay.
And they are another Ashkenazi owned company.
Yeah.
They invented the windowed envelope. So when you get an envelope that has a little window in it, that's how they made their billions.
Okay.
Got on the map. Just another weird coincidence. And other groups like NAMBLA and GLAD are all pushing this right now. So it's just, it's like a uphill battle trying to keep your own children from being indoctrinated because, some of their peers are so indoctrinated.
Yeah.
That's a lot of children, they don't listen to their parents, they'll listen to their friends first. So it seems like it's an attack on the nuclear family,
Very
in my
much
opinion. So. Yeah, so I'll leave you with your next callers, and thanks for letting me talk. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And as a matter of fact, our phone lines are completely open right now. Area code 512-248-8252. The other day, we were talking about computer security and, when is the government or some other responsible agency, institution really going to accept what a threat all of this cybercrime is to our economy, to our computer infrastructure, to our businesses. And I'm not the only person saying that. Over at Zero Hedge, they're quoting from The Hill, a gentleman by the name of Peter Pry, saying, when will America protect itself against EMP, cyber, and ransomware attacks? And they're talking about basically forming a congressional EMP commission. EMP is a big, scary word, but EMP is far less of a threat than ransomware and cybercrime, and it really does need to be dealt with. But at the moment, it seems to be treated the way, well, COVID is. The solution is to spend a lot of money on computer security companies rather than deal with the problem itself. So, now here's another little story, and this is an example of military technology finally getting its way into the civilian market. The story's coming out of Input Mag, and they're talking about these radar X-ray vision glasses that can see deeply enough into the ground to help rescuers find survivors after an earthquake. And they're talking about when there is a quake that people can dig in the wrong place, and survivors are basically left until it's too late. And so now they're looking at this new technology being made available of these vision systems based on ground penetrating radar that could actually see people buried in the rubble. And this is actually based on a military technology. It's been around for about 5 years, and I stumbled on it quite by accident. It's sort of the next thing past night vision and thermograph to allow soldiers to literally see through the walls of buildings and spot who's inside there. And I'm glad they're putting it to such good use here. All right, we got more callers on the line. Tom in Utah. Hello, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. By the way, we had that capability all the way back in the 60s. I was actually an instructor on what's called ground surveillance radar. Yeah. Which was used to identify individuals out in the forest or, like you say, through a wall. Mm-hmm. We had that all the way back in the 60s. Spurry Rand had put together a unit to do that. But anyway, the reason I called in is because you were talking earlier about the homosexual issues with the kids. Yes. In the cases that I've had to go in and defend or turn over in the courts, I ran head-to-head with what's called the National Child Welfare Act, put in place in 1993, mm-hmm. and authored by, of all people, Hillary Clinton. And then followed up in 1997 by what's called the Adoption and Safe Families Act, okay. 97. Again authored, enhancing our first National Child Welfare Act, Hillary Clinton, which gave the gay and lesbian community the privilege or the right or the opportunity to adopt children that are in the foster care system. Okay. And I didn't realize that I was looking at the Wicked Witch in the face when I was in D.C. actually. Okay, Tom, I got to put you on hold. Do not hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these few words. Back to our show here. We're talking with Tom in Utah about adoption by gay couples and two laws authored by Hillary Clinton that made this legal. And apparently you were involved in some litigation on this issue. Yeah, I had several cases where families have been relieved of their children. I got into the case, in my experience in pathology, turned the cases over, but in the process I realized there was something wrong in the system that provided the perverse incentive to take a child out of a family and put it in the system. And then ultimately the system made more money on the selling or the trafficking of those children. Mm-hmm. And of course, gay and lesbian couples were paying a premium price for children. That was a little bit of a shocking revelation to me. And what's really bizarre, I did not know that she was the author of those acts. Mm-hmm. Yet I was there in D.C. in 2009, 10, and 11, 2 months each time, and spoke to Hillary and all of the players, Biden, Obama, the whole schmeal. I had no idea at the time that act was the underlying force causing the destruction of so many thousands and thousands of families and the perversion of the children. You get a child in that environment, what's going to happen to their moral values? Now we're seeing that wave of immorality today, thanks to the Clintons.
Well, it's definitely a problem. It's a you do have to wonder in that environment, and I don't want to cast aspersions, but it does raise a question as to what that child is going to be like when they finally grow up and leave that home. What kind of values they're going to have.
Well, when you get a chance, Mike, I don't know if you see, I didn't really expose that issue. Go to the website, gassingamerica.com, a.k.a. Manufactured Madness.
Okay.
And underneath that, you'll see the destruction of families driven by this so-called act.
Okay, and that's gassingamerica.com. I remember who you are now, and we were talking about polyurethane foam insulation in housing trailers and stuff.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. We have the finest politicians money can buy.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the wrong people seem to have the money. All right, well, listen, Tom, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open, 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Bruce in Texas. Hello, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I was just wondering, did you happen to see the Indy 500 yesterday?
No, we were out on a lake with some friends on their boat, and I'm not a big racing fan the way I used to be, so no, I didn't watch it.
All right, I got it. Not everybody's still into it. If you're ever in the neighborhood, oh my God, every time I make a phone call, shut up, Bucky. I'm sorry. He's working for the New World Order.
Oh, okay. Well, give him an ear rub from me because I'm a dog lover.
Oh, that's good. Well, yeah, if you're ever in the neighborhood, go by the track. You can see the museum and all the cars through the decades. It's really amazing.
I'll probably do that. I love museums, although they can be a little depressing when you go into a museum and you see stuff on display that you played with when you were a kid. That can be a little upsetting as well, but we haven't gotten up to Indianapolis yet. It's kind of the other end of the state from where we are. We're just starting to sort of sojourn away from Santa Claus, and like I said, Saturday we finally made it up into Amish country, and that was a wonderful experience, and wonderful people.
Wow.
And we hit a bakery there that just had this amazing bread there, and we had a really good time.
Well, don't let Joe Biden know and Kamala Harris. They'll send a bunch of immigrants from Haiti over there.
Yeah, they probably will. We're sort of on guard here against that happening.
Yeah. Well, the Indy 500, it ended. It was one of the best I've ever seen. 2 laps to go. 3-time winner and a very personable guy, Helio Castroneves.
Uh-huh.
He made a pass, and conventional wisdom says don't pass until the last lap, or else you'll get repassed by the draft. Well, there was traffic up ahead, and he took the pass 2 laps to go and passed up a young driver from Mexico, and he used that traffic to pull a toe to stretch his lead, and won his 4th Indy 500. So he joined the 4 Winners Club. Climbed the fence. There was a huge mob there. I didn't go because I had read at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway website that they're going to limit attendance to like 1/4 capacity. And I thought, well, that wouldn't be fun because I'd rather be among the crowd. Being there among
I'm sure that'll be gone by next year, and like I said, I haven't done races since I was a kid in high school. I used to go up to the drag races all the time. Anyway, listen, Bruce, I got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. Phone lines are open, 512-248-8252. Give your dog a nice belly rub from me, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to our show here. We have open phone lines right now, area code 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Steve in East Texas. Hello, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good day, and happy, I'll tell you, it's a great day. But anyhow, I wanted to talk about the generation of families.
Yes.
There's a problem going on. There's a company called CarShield, and they're using this guy named Ice-T.
Yeah.
Advertised for them. And he has, I didn't know this because I don't listen to music. The only music I listen to is very old. Never mind.
Okay.
You wouldn't like. But he has that song that my granddaughter and my grandson brought me up about killing cops. And on top of that, I didn't even know they had websites, pornography websites. I didn't know he had websites promoting the use of hashish and marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
Until my daughter told me that when she saw that commercial. She said, "Hey, you see that guy? He's a pornographer." I'm like, "Oh," and she showed me everything. I didn't, wow. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Well, anyhow, I wish that everyone would call Car Shield and let them know that you're degenerating people by having these people, even on a commercial, to act and everything. And, you know, I sent them a bunch of text messages with the help of my granddaughter, my grandson. I'm computer illiterate, okay?
Okay.
You know, I do, okay. But I wish that everyone that would see that commercial will call them up and at least discuss this with them. Why are you using this person that promotes killing cops, promoting pornography, and marijuana? Look, I really don't have a big problem with the marijuana, okay? Not really. You know, I have friends that have epilepsy, so they use it up in Colorado and stuff. But the big issue is this, the pornography and his other music. And he has another guy that my granddaughter and my daughter showed me is in the same commercial, and he sings about thugging girls and stuff like that. And I looked at the lyrics, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" They put them on the commercial, and you know, it's beyond me that people would even put up with that. And I had to have my 14-year-old and my 12-year-old grandchildren tell me this, you know, because I keep out of it. But I just want everyone on the lookout. If you see those commercials, call them up and just tell them, please, don't use that commercial. You have so many other quality people that can advertise your product.
Yes.
And that's all I have to say.
Well, what are they advertising?
It's called Car Shield. You know, when your car breaks down.
Oh, Car Shield.
You know,
yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. I'm familiar with it. I misunderstood what you said before.
Yeah. Honestly, they're a very good company. I have 4 friends that actually have them, and they're very good quality. They really do take care of you.
Yes.
So I'm not putting them down product. I just don't want them to use these vile people to advertise their product. A good product should be advertised with junk.
Well, a good product should advertise itself, but, you know, somebody over there probably figured, you know, Ice-T is a celebrity and, you know, we can have a celebrity on our commercial, and they really didn't do the due diligence. You know, while you were talking, I did a quick web search, and yeah, even MTV ran an article about how Ice-T was debuting his porn site. Yeah, it's sort of a real gray area there.
Yeah, it is. And it just, you know, I see this all the time. It's the generation of what's going on in the society. And if we all just stand up and say, no, please change it. You got a great product, but don't them endorse you. You know, that's all I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to let everybody have a heads up. And if you see that commercial, call them up and tell them, please just take that commercial off and use other people.
All right. Sounds good to me. It absolutely sounds good to me. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for the phone call. We have open lines, 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Dan in Idaho. Hello, Dan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
All right. Good day. The other day, yesterday it was, I was listening to a radio program, AM, a national program. Well, actually, it's Friday. They were talking about, you know, the war and World War II and whatnot, and some stories they mentioned. And one of them was the island of Saipan.
Yes.
That what they claimed was that the people living there, the citizens, were so afraid of the United States military. They thought they were monsters. It was horrible. And so what they did is they were so afraid that they jumped off the cliff into the ocean.
Yes.
Well, the fact is, my dad was there. He was in the Navy, and he was on a detail to get these bodies out of the way so that the landing craft could get to the beach. The bodies were so thick that they were going to the screws of the ships.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get any further. Well, he was on this detail to move the bodies. He had to get into the water and move the bodies so that the ships could get through. And one of the bodies burst open.
Oh, gross.
And he ingested some of that fluid. And it put him in the hospital in San Diego for some time. He almost died from it.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is that Saipan was occupied by the Japanese.
Yes.
And the Japanese actually drove the citizens into the water over the cliff for the purpose to stop the ships coming closer. They didn't voluntarily commit suicide jumping off the cliff. The Japanese soldiers pushed them into the water.
Okay.
So I just wanted to clear that up and have a good day.
Well, thank you for that interesting historical insight, and that makes a lot more sense than the story that they were just that afraid of the Americans, although obviously the Japanese had propagandized the people of Saipan with how terrible the enemy was, which is what any occupying power is going to do, when they're occupying a country. Thank you for the call, and we have open phone lines, 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Bob in Colorado. Hello, Bob. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Mike? It's been a while since I've talked to you. I wanted to mention something about these UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
Trump signed an executive order to open up all this research.
Yeah.
And Biden has turned away almost every executive order he's done, but he did not turn that one down. And it's interesting that even Obama mentioned it.
Yes, Obama did mention it.
That's right. And our military is 30, 40, 50, who knows how many years ahead of us. And I just have to agree with you. I don't think if we had aliens or whatever they are, Martians or whatever, that they're going to come down here and just play games with us. I think it's a
they'd show up in force and they'd treat us the way Columbus treated the native North Americans or the Hispaniolas.
Right. Yeah, right. But anyway, I have to agree with you, and I think it's a big psyop, and we'll see where it goes from here. It's just really interesting. All of a sudden, everything's coming out, and with everybody doing shots, and they're so depressed, they're looking for something, and maybe this is what they're trying to do with this big psyop, is get everybody to think that, we have aliens here, and that's going to be our guide and all that stuff. So we'll see where it goes, Mike. But
there was talk a while back about a program called Operation Blue Beam, which was a plan to convince the entire Earth that there was an impending alien invasion to try and get all of humankind to unite together to defeat the alien enemy. And it was part of this whole New World Order thing. But I guess somebody decided it really wasn't going to work. They couldn't come up with convincing alien spaceships or convincing aliens, especially when you have trained visual effects experts studying everything that you do. I'd hate to think they were desperate enough to try that, but that may be one other reason why all of a sudden they're pushing this whole UFO thing. Personally, I think they're testing some new advanced aircraft up there, and they're pushing UFOs, so we don't ask too many questions about what we're seeing.
Well, Mike, I'm 70, and I remember Orson Welles and how everybody went for the big
The War of the
psyop.
Worlds, yeah, and just everybody panicked.
That's right,
And
that's right,
you know what's interesting
That's right.
is shortly after that, the U.S. government tried another experiment. They found this town out west, I think it was in New Mexico, that they were able to isolate completely, radio, television, everything, and then told them there was a space invasion coming in to watch their reaction. And it was about the same as the Orson Welles incident, except, of course, there was nobody saying, hey, this is all a radio broadcast.
Well, 1984 is here, and I just hope people start waking up. And with all the investigations going on, and some of the Republicans that really are putting their foot down to get the information out, Fauci is sweating.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, it's going to be very interesting now that people, whistleblowers, are putting out all their information. It can't be hidden anymore. But how many people are going to be inoculated before the information really all does come out, to where people are sitting there crapping their pants? And I'm sure that you are in a way too, because I know you and Claire took it. And if you knew what you knew now.
Well, you know, we got the shots because we were coerced into it. We were literally told we would not be able to visit her mother in her nursing home without being vaccinated, and that's why we went ahead and did it. And, you know, certainly I'm having regrets having gotten the shot, but we really did not have much choice.
Well, Mike, you know, it's always interesting talking to you with all the subjects, and that's what I love about your show. We try to stay on topic, but sometimes it takes us different places, and it gets even more interesting. So thank you so much for your show, and blessings to you, and talk to you soon.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch to Marianne in North Canton, Ohio. Hello, Marianne. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I wanted to give a shout-out to the troops.
Good.
Happy Memorial Day, and to all past and present servers, thank you for your service. We appreciate it very much. And to my cub, the staff sergeant, I'm very, very proud of you.
Well said, and thank you very much. Anything else?
Yes, I do believe that there are UFOs and aliens are real.
Well, I think aliens are real. I just can't think of a reason for them to bother with us. I mean, when you drive down the highway, do you stop at every anthill you pass?
But don't you stop and look at car wrecks and see what the hell happened?
True, but you know, the ants don't have the car wrecks. Civilizations evolve with their technology. You know, for a civilization capable of interstellar travel, we're barely out of the stage of having, you know, bone spurs shoved through our nose. And I just don't see how they would be that interested in us.
Well, they're just stopping it so they can laugh and see how backwards we actually are.
It's entirely possible we're a tourist attraction in this part of the universe. But again, why not plop down in the middle of Washington, D.C. and say, hi, we're here. Can we take a picture? Anyway, Marianne, thank you very much for the thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to go to Dustin in New Jersey. Hello, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, isn't it funny, all these, like, aliens, why do they have their blinking lights on?
Yeah, it's like they want to be noticed. You know, if you look at military aircraft, they're dark, they're stealthy, they're sneaky, and every time you see an alien spaceship in the movies, they're lit up like a billboard. It's like they're saying, "Here we are," you know.
Eat at Joe's. Eat at Joe's.
Yes.
Yeah, come on, man. Like, if an alien spaceship was coming down to the Earth, it wouldn't have any lights on, guys. I mean, wouldn't it be a stealth aircraft?
Yeah, it would. You know, that's always the claim. They never show up on radar.
But yet, they always have blinking lights from all these people with their cell phones. Everybody's got a cell phone, Mike. You know?
Yep.
We all see all the thousands of alien ships flying around. All right, Mike. I'm going to ask you something. Did you watch Soul yet?
Did I watch? No, I did not.
Mike, you and Claire need to watch it. You know, it kind of reminded me partly. Remember What Dreams May Come?
Oh, I remember. That was a great movie.
Mike, what kind of animation was that? Remember that it was like basically the painting, right?
Yes.
He was in the painting.
It was all CGI.
Oh, I know that, but I'm like, wasn't that incredible? Like, how many movies was like that?
Well, that one was a very unique art direction, and I remember it was the big hit of SIGGRAPH the year it came out.
But Mike, you and your wife gotta watch, Soul. And I probably didn't. I think I talked to you about this last time. Coco.
Okay.
Coco was incredible. Like it's incredible animation, and I know you're not. You're getting older. So am I. I'm 51.
Yep.
But we're not. But I still love animation. I love that look. Soul. Mike, watch Soul. I bought Soul 2 days ago.
Okay.
It is an incredible movie. If all your listeners, if you like animation, Mike, Pixar.
Oh, yeah, of course. Absolutely.
But, they're not perfect, but Soul is good. We know Finding Nemo and, you know the movie, But, I was going to talk about politics. I'm not. Maybe tomorrow. But, Mike.
Okay, Dustin, I'm sorry, but I got to cut you off. We got to take our last commercial break here. I got another caller waiting on the line for the last segment, and we will be right back. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today, and we're going to go to Mitchell in Memphis. Hello, Mitchell. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, what's going on?
Well, you tell me.
I'll try. Hey, listen, Michael, by the way, you mean that bone through the nose thing's not in style anymore?
No, not around here. Down in the South Pacific, yeah, you still see it here and there.
So that's what happened to my friends, huh?
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, I think it was Kelly. He sounds like he's an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And if he calls when he calls back in next week or whenever or later this week, I'd like to ask him the Memphis Bridge downtown that's broken. He was talking about seismic activity and such, and
I think he's a geophysicist.
Okay, well, I'm asking. As I called out to Kelly, could that have caused the break in the Memphis Bridge in Memphis, Tennessee? I was just kind of curious.
Well, it's certainly a valid question. But we're now finding out that crack has actually been there for a very long time, and that's the real cause of the stink. Is that the regular bridge inspections were obviously missing it or ignoring it, or whoever was in charge of maintaining the bridge just decided they didn't have enough money to fix it.
Well, it also gets back to you can't trust anything the authorities tell you.
That's true.
So they can come out and say, oh, no, it wasn't seismic activity, but that doesn't mean anything. And I wanted to touch on something. You brought up deep fake technology. And remember, a lot of people, especially in RBN, maintain that this government, this is a tyrannical, illegitimate, corrupt government.
Yes.
Now think of the danger of deep fake technology in the hands of tyrants.
Yes. That's the reason we're sounding the warning.
This is a very scary situation here because it's to the point that the whole idea of authoritarian government, which is what we have, would come into question, especially when there's no accountability.
With deep fake technology, we're literally going to be living in a matrix-like environment where everything that we see is artificially generated.
That's true.
Yep.
This is a huge issue. Remember, we've talked about a while back, John Adams in 1798 said that famous quote, "Our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people."
Yes.
Which is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Well, you don't have a moral and religious people. What we have now in society is a lot of what do you call it, moral relativism.
Yes.
And so we have people who are not moral and religious in government. So I'm sort of reiterating. I'm making the same point. You brought up when you were reading that story of the government propaganda campaigns. Well, we've always been being BS'd by the government propaganda campaigns, but now they're going to be on steroids.
They very much are, and we just have to develop the skills to spot it. Part of it is that if we know we're being propagandized and lied to, it automatically loses much of its effectiveness. Propaganda worked in the past because the American people were very naive and trusting. Anyway, listen, Mitchell, I got to let you go here. We're at the end of the show. Stay tuned for the John Stedmiller Show. Steve Elkins is going to be taking the microphone for at least part of that. Spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We'll be back tomorrow, Tuesday. Have a good rest of your Memorial Day, and aloha, America.